Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. We are, of course, talking about the Billy Meier case. Edward Albert Meier, as some of you know, is in his late 70s. He lives in a tiny mountain village in Switzerland called Hinterschmid-Ruti. There's a building there called the Semjase Silver Star Center, where an organization called the FIGU, which roughly translates to Free Community of Interests, works to publish Billy's material all over the world. He's written 40 books, over 40 books, and thousands of booklets, some which document his contacts with extraterrestrial humans, others which are various bulletins. His writings answer all the big questions in life. Who are we? Where do we come from? What's the purpose of our life? What stages of evolution do we go through? What happens after we die? What are the other human civilizations in our galaxy like? And all these deep, profound questions are answered by a man with only a sixth grade education. Now, where did Billy come to have this tremendous knowledge? Well, really one of two sources. According to Meier information, he's had extraterrestrial contacts going back to an age when he was 5 years old. His first mentor was a man named Svath, who was between 900 and 1,000 years old, who would meet Billy when Billy was about 5 years old, often in the Oregon forest. He would take Billy up in the ship and tell Billy about his previous lives, because that's the important thing here is the spirit form of Edward Albert Meier is incredibly ancient. And these extraterrestrials refer to his spirit form as Nocodamian because that was the first incarnation that they know of as that spirit form. And during that time, he was their teacher. And he's actually their teacher again. So Svath came to the earth to mentor the spirit form, mentor the boy that has the spirit form of a very, very ancient teacher. And he has been, on our world, the following teachers: Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Muhammad. And he teaches a very ancient and universal teaching called the teaching of the Spirit. And one of the important aspects of the teaching of the Spirit is something called the creational natural laws. There are laws that the universal consciousness sets down. And if you follow these laws, it can be very helpful in your life. If you get out of alignment with these laws, then you'll have suffering. One of these laws, these creational natural laws, is called the law of harmony. And it says, for example, on page 52, as a rule, suffering is always an effect of some form of wrong thinking. If the suffering relates to negative and bad or evil outcomes, in this form, incidents of suffering are indicators that the law of harmony is disregarded and broken, and that one is not living according to the law of being. Well, what does that mean? Well, we're told that we should keep our thoughts always neutral positive. When you have neutral positive thinking, you're living according to the law of harmony. Once you become too positive in your thinking or too negative in your thinking, you've broken the law of harmony. And the law of harmony says when you break that law, you'll have suffering in your life. So, of course, we want to avoid suffering. Everyone wants to avoid suffering. Another creational natural law is the law of striving. And everything in nature has to strive to earn its living, to earn its keep, to survive. And we human beings have to strive as well. And the most important striving that you can do is striving to learn, to evolve your consciousness. Because we're here in a material lifetime to gather information and to grow and learn, to evolve our consciousness. Now, our consciousness exists in two areas. We have a spiritual consciousness, which is your inner eye, which is the part of you that's immortal, and we have a material consciousness. That's the part of you which has to mature each lifetime. That's the part of you that eventually, when you die and your spirit form leaves your body, your material consciousness will leave your body, and it will be processed in the spiritual realm. And the ego is removed, the I is removed, and then all of the knowledge that you gained in that lifetime are reduced to what they call their essences. And these essences include, like hope and patience and love. And that information will strengthen your spirit form. And typically we should spend about a lifetime and a half on the spirit realm, and then before we reincarnate. But because we're in a state of very high population, spirit forms are reincarnating a little bit too soon, and sometimes a lot too soon. Along with the law of harmony, there's something that's talked about in Billy's book, The Goblet of Truth, that I wanted to read that might fill out some details there. It is necessary that you live in ample harmony with the powers that are in you and around you, as well as with the disharmonious powers that stand into contradiction to them, since everything is built up on contrariness, and therefore always both poles, positive and negative, must be taken into consideration and included in the efficacy of equalization, for which there is no middle way. And that's another creational natural law. In our universe, in the DERN universe, there's always a negative and a positive. And the goal is to balance between the negative and the positive. Just like in the world of molecules and atoms, we have electrons and we have protons, the negative and the positive. So we always, in our thinking, want to come to that harmonious center, and that's the law of harmony. The law of striving says we have to continue to work. Another creational natural law, of course, is reincarnation, which we were kind of talking about. Now, listen to what the Goblet of Truth says here about our innermost self. It says, you human beings have a larger innermost self, the spirit form, which animates your consciousness block as a tiny part piece of creation. Therefore, your life power is dependent on it physically, i.e. bodily. However, you are no form of duality, because as material bodies you are, as a human being, your own oneness, which is, however, dependent on the spirit form, which gives you life, and which is in itself also a oneness. Therefore, the spirit form lives in the body of you human beings, in the region of the superior colliculus, the seat of the spirit form in the human being in the roof of the midbrain. The spirit form cannot be influenced through effects on the body. Therefore, neither hot, cold, hunger, pain, illness, or well-feeling, and solely this spirit form is immortal, because if the physical life ceases, then the spirit form, it escapes into the realm of the other world to be reborn in its time, when a new human body is born, with a new consciousness block, a new consciousness, a new subconsciousness, and with a new personality that are created through the overall consciousness block. So at 21 days, the spirit form enters the body of a child and goes into that superior colliculus in the midbrain. And what comes in is a new consciousness block, a new consciousness, a new subconsciousness, and a new personality. So you come back in, your spirit form is at the level of evolution that you left off. Your material consciousness is a child again, and it has to grow back up. But it'll be in a better, more advantaged situation this time, because it will have impulses which will come from the spirit form. And those impulses will give you guidance and help you as you grow and help you make right decisions. And in the universal storage banks and the planetary storage banks, you'll also get these impulses as well, these signals. And that will kind of guide you on the way. Now remember, the universal consciousness doesn't correspond to the religious notion of God. And I'll try to make that a little clearer. The universal consciousness is not a heavenly Father. It doesn't give commands. It's neither good nor evil. It is neutral positive. It radiates love. In fact, the incredible splendor of nature is the visible expression of the love of creation. But it has no personality. It doesn't personally love you. It doesn't personally have a relationship with you. For example, the star in the center of our solar system, our sun, radiates light and heat. And all the life on this earth exists because of the light and heat from the sun. But the sun has no personality, and it doesn't personally love you. But the universal consciousness is the superintelligence behind our universe, and its modus operandi is evolution. And it creates spirit forms as a part of its evolution. And the Meyer information explains that most spirit forms of human beings on this earth are 4 to 5 million years old. So that means you've had many, 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 many material lifetimes. And locked deep within your subconscious is some of the memories of those lifetimes and some of the wisdom of your predecessor personality. So studying and learning is very, very important, not only for this lifetime, but your next lifetime as well. So these creational natural laws have been created, and when you violate them, you get your life out of balance and you can get in trouble. Again, some of these creational natural laws quickly is, first of all, the law of love. Now, love, as explained by the Meyer teachings, is not a false love. It's not a romantic love. It's not built on soft music and candlelight. This love is built on wisdom and on a kind of observation. Semyase put it this way. She said that wisdom and love go together, and the creation and its laws are wisdom and love at the same time. And love is the highest principle in all creation. And everything follows that principle in absolute logic. Every tiny plant, every tiny animal fulfills its purpose in love. And when we human beings are fulfilling our purpose in love, we're functioning under the law of harmony. We have a neutral positive frame of reference, a neutral positive thought patterns, and we can experience something called Empfindung in the German, which is this very sensitive level of perception. And when you start to go and experience this, I recommend you be outside as much as possible. Get out of an urban environment and go into some place where there is enough trees and enough life for you to start to experience the infundung, which is the radiating love of creation. And you'll start to hear it through the sounds of creation. Every tiny plant, every tiny animal fulfills its purpose in love. What does it say in the Maya information? That when you look up into the stars at night and you see the stars, there's a visible light which comes from the stars, but there's an invisible light, which is the love of creation. And as we raise our sensitivity, we can start to sense the radiating love of creation. So this is a higher kind of perception that not too many people have on the earth still. I have Nate. He's waiting in the wings. I'll have to bring him on in a second here. I just wanted to cover a few of these concepts, which I think they're so important. Let me pick back up in the Goblet of Truth here. These creational principles are to be recognized in all life and in all that which is existent, as in the dying and the reawakening of the plant world. Therefore, also in the becoming and passing and becoming again of light and darkness, as well as in the tides of the seas and in the uncountable other things that are created through the laws and recommendation of creation, in the environment of you human beings, in nature and in the entire universe. It is only through observing the sky, i.e. the universe, with the stars, which are integrated into the 1,000,000,000-year-old orbits and cannot be influenced through you human beings, that it comes about that a universal regulation is given, which not only includes you human beings, but also all existing things, all life forms of all kinds. Therefore, you human beings of Earth, with all your daily occurrences, are a minute part, a minute speck of dust in the entire and the immeasurable, gigantic vision of the creation. And whoever knows the truth about the creation and about its laws and recommendations and learns knowledge and wisdom out of this will be free in himself or herself, because he or she creates true love and freedom as well as peace and harmony in his or her inner nature, out of which a consciousness-based and psychical well-being shines forth. So we have an inner nature, and that inner nature is our connection to creation. That inner nature is really your spirit form, your Geist form. And in what controls your spirit form is something called the Gemut. And the Gemut controls the thoughts and the feelings of the spiritual consciousness. I wanted to talk a little bit quickly about something in the book called The Way to Live, something which describes 7 steps of education. Happenings of the world depend on the thoughts, it says. And as the first step, the human being must search for and find the truth. And out of that, you learn and widen the knowledge. And I bet a lot of people at this show are searching for the truth, and that's why they're here. As the second step, the human being must correct his or her thoughts, using control and direct them to the truth of his or her attained knowledge. Remember, good thoughts lead to good feelings lead to good habits, and good habits lead to good circumstances in your life. As with the fourth step, the human being must, proceeding out of his inner harmony, correct order, form, and harmonize his own personality. Have you harmonized your personality today? Have you expanded your knowledge today? Have you treated another human being well today? The fifth step, correct order, form, and harmonize your surroundings, your family life with your relatives. The sixth step, harmonize the closer environment of friends, comrades, and acquaintances. Seventh step, correct order, form, harmonize a group of human beings, the mass of humanity, the country, the world in a form, which is based to the human being and the creational natural laws. So I want to continue this discussion, and I will bring, I got some callers. I want to bring on 661, I think Nate's standing by. Nate, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. I'm stepping through this information, and some of the stuff I was just reading from the Goblet of Truth is so profound. I was sent, Marianne sent me from Switzerland. Getting a little feedback.
Does that sound like a spigot being turned on?
I don't know what it sounds like. Could be.
Someone's running the water near.
Okay.
On the outside.
So Nate, I know you.
Well, let me know if it starts. Go ahead.
I know you got some stuff to share with us. So
I was just gonna ask you how do you go about harmonizing? What does it mean to harmonize?
That's a very good question. I'll have to use my own intuition on this. I think harmonizing deals with neutral positive thinking. I think when you harmonize your personality, there also come good feelings. A happiness is associated with that. I know when I've done it, but I don't know exactly all the steps yet that it takes to harmonize your personality. You know, part of the harmonizing of the personality, I think, involves or can involve those 77 meditative sentences, like the one that talks about I always remain relaxed, and thereby I gain might over myself. When I feel myself becoming tense, I'll repeat that over and over again. I always remain relaxed, and thereby gain might over myself. The other one I like that I'm trying to learn right now, it says, everything is achievable for me, and I master whatever I accomplish. Everything is achievable for me. I master whatever I accomplish. So I think, at least as far as I know now, those are the ways I try to harmonize my personality. But you know how the Meyer stuff is. Sometimes you have to go searching for these things. They don't make it blatantly obvious. At least, I mean, even when it comes to the creational natural laws, it's taken me all this time to finally sort them out. I don't even see a list anywhere. Do you?
No, I actually haven't. I've been on the whole the virtues. I wanted to find a list of all the virtues that, and then their opposite. Because the opposite, when the teachings, when they talk about virtues, they say the opposite is temptation. And the stronger your virtue, the least likely it is you'll be led down the path of temptation or disharmony. So harmonizing. How do you do it? I mean, you're a musician, right? So how would you talk about that in terms of music?
Well, to harmonize in music, if you play one note and go up a third, you'll have harmony. That's probably a cheat answer. You can also go up a fifth and have harmony. The first third and the fifth produce a harmony. As far as thinking is concerned, I notice a real happiness associated with me and a real stability, and also a real eagerness to take on challenges. When I'm in a disharmonious state, I feel a lack of energy, a lack of motivation. Sometimes I'm very vulnerable to things like electronic media when I'm not in a harmonious state. And then I'll veg out in front of some YouTube video or something to that effect. So yeah, this is what I'm trying to. These are good questions, very, very good questions. Another thing I notice, I think we spend way too much time indoors, and I think we should spend more time outdoors, and we spend way too much time in an urban environment, and all of these things produce disharmony in the soul. I think it make it much harder for us to maintain harmony. Today, most all of the day, I was barefoot, and in the book The Psyche, Billy talks about how it's important for those nerve areas in your feet to be stimulated when you're outside. So these are just a few clues. If you have any other comments, please throw them out there.
So being in, well, today is Sunday, and I think this is probably the worst day of the week for anybody who's sensitive, which is interesting, because I've felt like all day today, like, pressing down, but I went for a nice long hour walk, but it still hasn't helped so much, but maybe it's something I ate then. But being indoors, so there's something, I don't know if this is in the material. I'm pretty sure it is, but I just don't know where.
Mm-hmm.
It talks about positive ions and negative ions.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Or something that's measurable in that effect, that the human being thrives on negative ions. So when you're up in the mountain region or out in the forest, you get a lot of negative ions.
Oh, yeah.
But if you're in the office or you're in front of a computer, you're in your car, you're getting a more on the positive ions.
A lot of positive ions.
And this has an effect on your psyche. And some people may notice, like, right before it rains, they get a little depressed or something. Not when it's raining, but right before it rains. Like there's a huge push of the positive ions through the air when that happens.
Interesting. I didn't realize that. I thought so. The negative ions don't come till the actual rain, is what you're saying? Because
yeah.
The storms actually produce negative ions, don't they? Once they start.
Yeah, I think so. I think once it gets going, then it's good. But like right before it happens, there's a drop or something. And this is actually picked up on by modern scientists and stuff. Is they realize that there's an effect going on there, and a lot of sports people wear these like wristbands and stuff that are constantly pushing out these negative ions, if you will.
Oh, you can get those now? You can buy this?
Yeah.
Oh, that's an important
yeah. Remember the? I forgot who it was. I want to say one of these guys that was doing this. Who was it? Randolph Reif or something? Not Raymond Reif, but.
Oh yeah. I know who you're talking about. I can't. Yeah.
He was doing the weather, and the FDA came down on him and threw him in jail, and he died there, or in prison, and he died there.
Yeah.
What
a world.
He had, yeah, great. Hey. Well, that's just full circle, But he was studying this. He called it, was it radon energy or Orgonian energy? That's what he called it, Orgonian. And he was saying that it had he's saying this is the energy, the background energy of creation. Now, I'm going to go down a thing here that I don't think it's backed by the material, but it's just maybe conjecture or putting stuff down. That when you farm, you're supposed to farm for 2 seasons and then let one season let the ground lie fallow. And we don't do that, but in that process of lying fallow, perhaps there is something to do with this, what it was deemed Orgonian energy. And I'm sure there's another scientific name for it, or a name that they use. But that might have to do with, the background or there's a different light. The stars emit a light, but then there's a different light, which is irradiating love of creation. And maybe that's what they mean by it. I find that interesting because we're also talking about reflexology a little bit in the psyche and stuff, and how that relates to the inner workings of the people. And I think Eve has some interesting earth bath stuff that she's talked about before. Oh.
Well, maybe she'll come on and tell us about it. That's funny. Well, let me step back a little bit because unless you had, did you have something more specific you wanted to talk about this afternoon?
No, just keep a conversation going or whatever comes up.
Okay. Well, let me jump back in to the Might of Thoughts and to some information regarding creation. And I started talking about this a little bit at the beginning of the show. Creation is... It's not God. The Meyer material says the term God always deals with human beings. And there were, what does it say in the OM, Omphale Murado? It says, the gods of the earth were human, and they came from the depths of space. And they created our religions. And many of these gods were quite brutal, and they demanded worship. But eventually they died off and they wandered off. Now the universal consciousness is the superintelligence which runs our universe. Our universe is 46 trillion years old. The Meyer information refers to it as the DERN universe. Well, there's also a parallel universe called the Tao universe, which I think was constructed basically at the same time. What throws our scientists off is that the universe that we look at, we only look at material. And the material is never older than about 25 or 30 billion years old. So our scientists, I'm just approximating there, think the universe is only that old. But in fact, it is much more ancient than that. There are 7 rotating spheres in our universe, and these counter-rotate against one another. And what we see is just the material belt, which is the 4th layer. And that's where the stars are, the galaxies, the solar systems. Now, what is so interesting about this? Go ahead, jump in, Nate.
I was going to say, this brings something interesting up. In one of the laws, I guess one of the first laws of thermodynamics or something, that a matter can't be made or destroyed. It can only be changed. And this law was what I had read was basically acting as mimicking, or not mimicking, but in conjunction with the whole Bible. The God made everything and then rested, and therefore nothing is ever made again. And the early science, in order to be in line with this, threw down that rule. And so, but I think if one takes a look at nature, and they see things coming in to existence and flourishing and then, dissolving back, that, a star comes in, it pulls its energy from, it starts drawing upon all these, smaller particles or atoms, hydrogen atoms and stuff, and those atoms had to come from somewhere, and then it builds more complex things, and then it seems like it itself is going through a lifespan, and then it explodes, and then these things go wandering out into space, and then they build more complex things. But at the same time, to actually step back and think about it as these materials and stuff, they start dissolving. It's not even considered in any of the scientific literature. It's just, it's there because it's there, and then it can only build complex, but it doesn't talk about the dissolving. In fact, they say certain things like, if there was no chaos, then everything in the universe would be kind of like lead or something like that. Because they say the lead is one of the most stable elements or something.
Right.
But
I think
interesting.
the oldest material that we find is about 40 billion years old. But I don't think it stays in a solid form much longer than that, and then it transforms.
We find, or
it may be that even the Pleiar, and it says the oldest material. This is Contact 228. It says the oldest material that you have found is close to 40 billion years old, I think, is what it says here. I'm just reading this.
So that was the rock they found or something? An asteroid?
Who knows?
I remember reading something like that, but that's interesting. So, like, how are we going to how did they go about determining that the universe was the age it was? You know?
Well, obviously, if we could age things properly, then we would know that the Great Pyramid is 73,000 years old. And then we'd have to rewrite our history books entirely, which would need to be done anyway, right?
Yeah. Oh, that would be awesome, though. A lot of this stuff. I think once we master time on a certain level, we'll be sending probes back through time and stuff. And I think that's probably what we're seeing sometimes when people see a UFO in the sky or something, that we're actually sending probes back and helping us correct history. And that would seem like I think I also read about something that talks about them having a television of some sort that will have the ability or be hooked up to some sort of apparatus that could look back in time.
The chronovisor, I've heard these rumors. I don't know if this is true.
Well, not from us, but I think in the material it talks about in the future.
Oh, I see. You got me there. That's a very good question.
Chronovisor, where do I get that at?
I would like to have that myself.
I just need one to go forward a little bit, so I can get the next winning lottery numbers or something like that.
Yeah.
Chronovise that.
Yeah, exactly. So I was talking about creation, and it has an expansion phase, and it has a contraction phase. And our universe is the lowest form of creation because it has material belt. Now, this is a mind-boggler, and Michael Udebrook has spent a huge amount of time studying this. But, the next round with our creation, it will not have a material belt. There will not be any material. And I find that slightly disturbing, as I often do, as I'm learning this material, because it just kind of stretches my whole point of view. Do you feel that ever too, Nate, or do you not experience that? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that this goes back to the whole identity with the ego that's going on, because we almost think that there's no other way to live, and according to the information, it's once we only become conscious, truly conscious, once we merge back with creation. That's when we gain our consciousness, and that's a mind-boggler because you think you're conscious now.
Yeah, we're not. Even our material consciousness is not completely conscious. You know what I'm saying?
We keep on, and we keep on the refining process. Trying to steer and guide our thoughts in alignment with what consciousness is. I think that's maybe what's going on, since we're on a consciousness-related evolution. We're evolving towards consciousness. Hopefully, most of us.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like I said earlier. Most of us here on the Earth are about 4 to 5 million years old in terms of our spirit form. There are some of us here that are 8 to 12 million years old, and those are the human beings that came here from other worlds in the very, very ancient past. Let me read this. It's right here in the Psyche. Those created on Earth are still so young that regarding their evolution, they are only beginning to change their last baby shoes, while those human beings living on Earth, who originally came from the far reaches of outer space, only have a total age of 8 to 12 million years. And that 8 to 12 million years, you'll spend a certain amount of time in the physical and then a certain amount of time in the spiritual realm. And that's where your spirit form is absorbing all the wisdom that you learned in your previous lifetime. And then you'll get a new material consciousness and new consciousness, build a new consciousness block, and then your spirit form will get pulled into a child again. And in a time when there's overpopulation, the spirit forms come in a little too early, sometimes a lot too early. And this creates problems because we haven't finished processing all the information from our previous life. And I think from Michael Udebrook's last lecture, he was listing out the negative aspects of that. And one of the things that can happen is you tend to be a little bit too dependent on your parents. That's one of the side effects. I don't know, that just stuck in my mind for whatever reason.
That and the masculine isn't defined correctly.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's scary. Definitely, yeah. So it's I guess it's hard in that sense. It in a way is kind of harder on the male. I'm just assuming that, but yeah, you don't form your maleness completely enough.
Yeah.
So
at least we can multitask better.
Because we're more feminine, is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
Okay. But there are 7 evolutionary steps that we go through, and it takes about 42 million years, 40 to 60 million years to go through this. I'll read this here a second. In order to reach the high evolutionary level mentioned, the human being must already have lived through his or her seemingly endless reincarnations of 42 million years. So there are 7 evolutionary steps. You start out as primitive, you go to rational life, which is about where we are now, intelligent life, then real life, and then creational wisdom or life in creational wisdom, and then into this 6th stage where you're half physical and half spiritual. And this is the next stage for the Pleiaren to move into. There are some beings that allegedly in the Andromeda galaxy which are at this level. With the Pleiaren are supposed to get some of their advice from these people. And then the 7th stage is a purely spiritual stage that starts out with Arahat Athrasata and moves all the way up to the Patali level. And we spend about 1 billion years in that stage, and we spend about 40 to 60 million in the stage just before that. And then we merge back with creation. And then, as Nate was saying, that's when we really become conscious. And I like that you brought that up, because I really think, even though we think of ourselves as being conscious, right now, I'm not so sure that you could for sure say that. Any comments, Nate?
I was trying to think about the one video that was done by the guy that kind of explained this, and I was trying to find it here. But yeah, I think when we think about consciousness, we need to kind of realize that is our goal. And I'm also assuming that there's something. I mean, because when you read about this, oftentimes you'll talk about 10 to the power of 49 levels, or Udebrook Michael spoke about the 10 to the 49 powers of creation beyond this creational phase of our creation. So it just goes just crazy like.
Yeah.
Can we imagine 10 to the 49 of anything?
I can't.
No.
And I cannot imagine the eternity, beyond eternity, because even our universe, which one great time, one expansion phase, is 315 trillion years or something to that effect. And then the universe contracts for 315 trillion years. And then there's a kind of sleep period. And after that,
I had
guess,
that
go ahead.
155 trillion years?
Maybe
right.
That's it.
And what are we at? 47 trillion years so far?
46, I think.
46 trillion. And at what time did life actually start appearing in the form of human life? Like how many trillions of years beyond the birth was it?
Well, I can tell you this. I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you that 8 to 12 million years ago, Homo sapiens started evolving on the Earth. But that human beings are much older than that. In other words, that was just human beings, Homo sapiens, appearing on the Earth. It was about 8 to 12 million years ago. But I know. Go ahead.
Like, what do our scientists say about the age of our universe, according to them?
That's a good question. I'd have to look it up, but it's in like 20 billion or 30 billion years.
Last time I had them at 13 billion years.
13. Yeah, that's right.
And that was based upon the background radiation of what they considered the remnants of the Big Bang.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things they found interesting is actually the expansion is actually accelerating and not deaccelerating like they think that would happen.
Wow. And doesn't the expansion occur at a rate that's faster than the speed of light?
Yeah, I think so. Which is,
contradicts all of their.
Yeah, but you can't go faster than the speed of light. You know that, right?
Exactly.
Impossible.
It's impossible. The fact that the universe is doing it is completely another issue that we'll just ignore for now.
Yeah.
Since we can't explain it. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about what the book The Psyche says about God. And it says here, if there was a God, as the religions see and name him, then there would be only one single religion in the whole world, the religion of God. There would be no Confucianism, no Islam, no Hinduism, no Buddhism. Just that there would also not be any other religions, and also no Christianity, which, and this is, I guess, Billy's words, no Christianity which, with its religious delusional, blood-spilling in wars, deceitful murders, and persecutions, has staged the most vile butchery of human beings in the history of the world. No other religion has ever demanded so much blood and human being as precisely as Christianity has. And that's sometimes where I think it gets. It's sometimes difficult to talk about the Meyer material and say things like that.
So with God and the idea of a God comes the idea of specialness, and with specialness comes separation, and you get special privileges. I know when I was introduced or influenced by some older people that I looked up to because they seemed like they knew stuff, that I took on that idea, like, oh, I'm protected, and I did some really stupid things because I thought I was protected. Yes, one of the things was to test this protection and see how far I could go with it.
Oh, that's bad.
So when it came down to it, what reminded me of it was like when you were talking about this was the way people go about praying and stuff. Like, but the what is prayer, right? It's like, hey, by the way, it's an interaction. It's like a bank. It's a barter system, right? I will act this way if you do this thing for me. What do you say, huh?
It's a bargain.
Try to do that with gravity. Come on, gravity, just this time, right? And that's the way I look at an overall truth versus just a make believe. But I did read something interesting in the psyche that kind of reminded me of a type of prayer. And this was recently brought on because someone asked me, can wishful thinking come true or something? And in the psyche it says, should a wish of any kind become realized, then the harmony of the consciousness must first be produced through a right and healthy mode of thinking.
That makes sense.
Which kind of, then we got to ask yourself, well, what is a wish? And you have to, and there's that word again, harmonizing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's pretty amazing, with the Meyer information, there's so much emphasis that's placed on the personal responsibility of our thinking. In other words, good thinking leads to good feelings lead to good habits, and good habits lead to good circumstances in your life. So the big challenge is that, and this would be an interesting thing to discuss a little bit, Nate, is sometimes we are dealing with, in the current time, perhaps unbalanced thinking that we had a year or two ago. And those unbalanced thoughts that sent you down a certain path in your life now will manifest maybe later in life. And
what do you mean you've taken care of these at one time, or you thought you took care of them, but you didn't? Is that?
Or maybe you made a decision, maybe in your career or in your personal life, and the manifestations of that decision may turn out not so good later. You understand what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, kind of like smoking.
Yes. Not to pick on smokers, but
no.
Well, it's just like overeating. Okay, for example, overeating. One meal doesn't cause a big problem. 2 meals, it's months later that when you're 20 or 30 pounds overweight, you see there's a time lag, and we don't realize that the manifestation of the wrong thinking sometimes doesn't have effects until after that time lag. Please comment.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is the underlying pinning with a lot of my arguments with people when I say something is bad. Something is bad, like, for example, heavy metal music, right? I was having this discussion with a friend of mine, and he's telling me, well, I listen to, there's nothing going on that's wrong with me, and da-da-da-da. And I say, well, I think of it more like smoking, right? I go, you have a cigarette, big deal, not going to hurt you. You have 2 cigarettes, not going to hurt you. You start smoking a pack a day for the next 20 years, good chance it's going to hurt you. Right?
Well,
and I
tell
said,
me something. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Tell me a little bit more about this heavy metal thing, because there's a gym that I work at here locally. My God, and what they're playing in there, that heavy metal, it just like vibrates my whole insides out. And it's sometimes hard for me to even get in a mindset to work out because I'm just completely disfocused by this it's a new kind of heavy metal. It's got to be. It probably has a name, but I'm not familiar with it. But what have you found out about the dangers of heavy metal?
Well, I know that it causes a disruption in your feeling world, just like certain types of rap music do.
Wow.
There's and as you know, it's kind of like carrying around that pack of cigarettes and using it every day. There's going to be a problem with what comes around. I know a lot of people that kind of start living really poor lives based upon this stuff, because it's very damaging. It's very, like, I don't know. Even if you watch the videos, if you ever watch the heavy metal videos, like, what are they doing?
I don't know. You know, this would be a whole. It's funny that we keep kind of coming back to these kind of topics, because we talk about the electronic media a lot, which is talked about. I think that's in Contact 345, and the damage that the electronic media is doing to our psyche, and I guess it's the same kind of thing with the heavy metal.
It's a slide backwards, in my opinion. Like, because if I think about like the 50s and 60s, you know, when rock and roll came about, there was a huge connect that happened with people. You know,
right?
Like, and then, you know, the degeneracy got a hold of it, and it's now slide it back for some of the people. And then there was a discussion about, well, the type of music that play or listen to, and they said, well, our music is much more advanced in that, or it's evolved in that if you heard it, you just cry uncontrollably, or, you know, it would take hold of you, kind of like rock and roll did back in the, which now I'm interested in. Now I want to hear it, but I think maybe for a next show I can look that up. And Billy said it sounded like three different. It kind of sounded like one of three different songs that we can look up here.
Huh. That's so interesting. Yeah. I guess we're kind of running out of time here. We've only got about 2 minutes on the stream. Well, folks, I appreciate everyone coming. We talked a little bit about the creational natural laws. We talked a little bit about reincarnation. Talked a little bit about the psyche. So I guess we'll call it quits for this afternoon show, and we'll see you guys next weekend. You've been listening to Ohio Exopolitics, and we've been talking about the might of thoughts, the psyche, and the way to live. So we'll talk to you next time. Have a good day.